Okay, so this video is about CSCS Round 1. This was the first CSCS time attack of the year, held at Mosport DDT, the driver development track. And this was also the first time I took the E55 out on track this year. But all in all, a really fun event. And it's a great track, a lot of cool cars, and the weather was great too the whole day, so that was really good. And the car felt really good on track. I didn't do too good of a job as a driver. That's because this was my first time on this track, and it's a pretty technical circuit actually. There's a lot of blind corners. It's one of those tracks where you have to know the racing line, and you have to have all the braking points and everything memorized to do good as a driver. And I think one day just wasn't enough to do all that for me. But still, I think the result at the end turned out fairly okay. So let me just show you how everything went. So now for this year, cars are divided into 4 categories: Production, Street, Super Street, and Unlimited. I was in the Super Street category, the same as last year. And this year both the Street and the Super Street category are on Pirelli Trofeo Rs. So it puts everyone on a even platform, at least in terms of tires. At first you have to start with 5 qualifyings. And each qualifying is 15 minutes long, and basically your goal in the qualifying is to try to get within the top 6 cars of your category, because only the top 6 get to compete in the time attack. So now this was Q1, qualifying 1, and I arrived to the first qualifying fairly late because I arrived to the event late. So I missed out on a part of that, and I only got 2 laps, well, 1 lap in this qualifying. One was the out lap and then 1 timed lap. And so I guess I'll use this lap to just explain the track a little bit. So when you exit the pits, you enter turn 2, which is a long right-hander. And the exit is fairly blind on this because of the elevation change, and getting the exit right on this is absolutely critical. Because when I didn't get the exit right, my lap times were way off. So it's really important to get this corner right. Right after this, you enter turn 3, which is a double right-hander. And after that, you enter turn 4, which is a pretty sharp left-hander. And turn 4 then leads into turn 5, which is another left-hander. And then there's a bit of this straight over here, not too long. And then you enter turn 6, which is another left-hander. Then you enter turn 7, another left-hander. And then after turn 7, this is a bit of a tricky section, turn 8, 9, and 10. And they're fairly blind because of this elevation change. You don't see turn 9 and 10 until you approach them. So you have to memorize the racing line and the braking zone through these. That's the only way to get these corners right. And then you go into turn 11, which is like, there's a fair bit of elevation change on this corner too, so getting the braking right on this is pretty difficult. And then this is turn 12. Then you go into this chicane, turn 13, which is a fairly slow section of the track. And then after turn 13 you get into this, it's a bit of a straight, you can pretty much go flat out through this section, but I wasn't going flat out at first. This is turn 14. Almost in any car you can go flat out through turn 14, but I was still lifting off because I wasn't too confident in the beginning. And then you get to this quiggly section, which is turn 15, and that leads back onto the start-finish straight. So that's basically 1 lap. So yeah, it's a fairly difficult track, a lot of elevation changes, and a lot of blind corners, so that really makes it difficult to choose the right line and to get your braking zones right. So basically it's a track you have to get it perfectly memorized to do well on it. Otherwise it's really hard to determine the correct line and the correct braking zones. For the second lap I decided to follow this car. It was a Lancer Evo. I decided to follow his lines just to learn the track a little better. This is a good way I find of learning a new track, just right behind someone that already knows what he's doing and just learn from him. So now you can probably see I'm starting to drive a little better. But still it was a fairly slow lap. This lap was a 1:45, so just to put that into comparison, the best lap that I did was a 1:39.6 on this track. So this is 6 seconds slower than that, so it's a considerably slow lap. But at this point I wasn't trying to go fast, I was just trying to learn the track as best as possible. So now by qualifying 2 I had a bit of a better understanding on what to do on the track. So this ended up being my fastest qualifying time. It was a 1:41.5, still not a fast time. Part of the reason is because I got held up later in the lap. But even as a driver I wasn't driving too well. I was overshooting some of the braking points and braking too early on some of the other turns. Basically the reason is that I didn't have everything memorized at this point. But the reason this still ended up being my fastest qualifying time was because after this in qualifying 3 I ran off the track, and after that I had to pull off the track, which is why I didn't set any good laps in qualifying 3. And for qualifying 4 and 5, those got red flags, so I couldn't really set any laps in qualifying 4 and qualifying 5. So that's why this still ended up being my fastest qualifying lap time. And talking about the rear wing did work as it was supposed to work. When you would accelerate, it would open up, and then under braking it would close. But the speeds on this track weren't that high, so the differences were really subtle. I think the difference would be way more pronounced later on when we get to Toronto Motorsport Park or some of the faster tracks. Just because downforce works a lot better when you're going faster. It doesn't work too well at these speeds. So this was later on in the lap. I got held up a little by the Civic, and yeah, this slowed the lap down by I think a second or something. And after that I just tried to stick as close to the Subaru as possible, so I could do a good job on the remaining lap at least. And at this point I'm not sure why I didn't floor the car fast out of the corner. I just went really slowly down the straight. But then after this I just do the cool down lap after, and that ended up being my fastest qualifying 2 lap. So this was now qualifying 3, and in qualifying 3 I guess I was driving a little too aggressively. I was trying to explore the limits of the track, just trying to brake as late as possible, and yeah, just trying to take as much speed through every corner as possible. And that didn't really work out because, first of all, I wasn't going any faster because I was pushing the car too much. And then later on, I think it was the second or third hot lap where I braked a little too late in one of the corners and just ran straight off the track. So I guess I'll just skip to that. So this was the second hot lap I was doing on Q3, and I was pushing the car a little too much this time. I was just going on the power a little too early, so the tail was sliding, braking a little too late. And on this turn I overshot the braking zone a little too much and just went straight off the track. And after this I had to pull off the track just to make sure the car was fine and nothing broke or anything. And everything was fine, just the splitter was full of grass and weeds. But other than that, everything was okay. But it's just that I lost that session and I couldn't learn the track a little better in Q3. And after that, qualifying 4 and qualifying 5 got red flagged. So yeah, that's part of the reason why I didn't get to learn the track that well, because I didn't get to do an awful lot of laps on this track. So skipping to the final time attack, my 2 forward-facing cameras had died by this point because the charger I had connected to them wasn't powerful enough to keep them charged. But I'll get that fixed next time. The only footage I have from this is the rear-facing camera. But in this you're given 5 laps to basically set your fastest time. Well, 5 laps really means you have 3 hot laps, because the first lap is a warm-up lap and the last lap is a cool-down lap. So the 3 laps in the middle is where you get your hot laps. But I only decided to take 2 of those hot laps because whenever I used to do 3 hot laps on this track, my brakes would tend to overheat by the end. So I didn't want to take that risk doing 3 hot laps. So what I did was I did 1 hot lap and then a cool-down lap in the middle and then another hot lap. And the thing was, the first hot lap that I did, I screwed up on turn 2. I just got on the completely wrong line in the exit. So yeah, that ended up being a really bad lap. It was a 142. And then I'll just skip right ahead to my fastest lap. So this ended up being my best lap of the day. And the thing was, at this point I only had 1 lap left, so that's why I didn't want to push the car too much. So I think I was driving a little too cautiously this time. I was braking a little too early and not going on the power early enough, but still it ended up being an okay lap, a 139.6, which is good enough because I think even if I improved, I could have improved on this lap time, I think, because I just wasn't pushing the car too much this lap. But the thing is, even if I did improve on this lap, I wouldn't have gained any position in my category or anything, because the next person up in my category was 2 seconds quicker than me. That was an LS swapped Miata. Miata with the V8 engine. So that it would have been pretty much impossible beating him. So I think I'm still happy with the result. And I think this camera at the rear wing ended up being pretty helpful because I could really analyze how the rear wing was opening and closing. And right now I had it programmed to whenever I would press the accelerator completely, there's a switch under the accelerator, and whenever that's pressed, the rear wing opens up, and then whenever I lift off the accelerator, the rear wing closes. But I think I can improve on this a little bit by programming it a little differently. I think right now it was opening up a little too soon on corner exits. But by adding a bit of a time delay so the rear wing remains closed while the car is still cornering and then opens up when it gets down to the straights, that will hopefully help me get better corner exits later on. So I'm thinking of doing that. It's just a programming change. But I think overall the car felt pretty good. The changes we've made with the front 295 tires, I think that definitely helped a lot. Now the front end really grips. The balance is pretty much close to perfect now, so that's a really good thing. So now looking at the overall results, I finished 18th overall. These are the overall results from cars from all different categories. There were 77 competitors in total. So I guess finishing 18th in 77 cars is not that bad of a result at the end, especially if you consider this is a fairly heavy car compared to all the other competitors on a track that favors lighter cars. So I think it's an okay result in the end. So yeah, I guess that's it for this part. I didn't do too well as a driver on this track, unfortunately, but the good thing is that the car felt really good, the balance was really good, and everything worked as it should work on the car. So that's a really good thing.